we're going to be in Mobile next week. Senior Bowl starts, and it's in full effect. The practices are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The game will be Saturday. You and I'll be there Monday. But how important is it to talk to a Hendon Hooker, even though you know you're not going to see him play, in terms of interviews, whether formal or informal, and getting a sense of who he is, knowing full well that the injury is going to preclude him from stepping on the field?
The All-Star games are invaluable for interviews, in my opinion. And we made sure that over that week that we were down to Senior Bowl, or if we were at the East-West or wherever what All-Star game we were at, that we made sure that we took advantage of interviewing those players. And as a scout, because of coaches, some coaching staffs go down there. There's not as many coaching staffs that go down to the Senior Bowl anymore. But if you can get in front of those kids, at least get the initial interview out of the way, because you have to remember at the combine, you are limited to the number of formal interviews that you have. So as many interviews that you can get out of the way at the Senior Bowl, at the East-West, then that gives you more opportunities to interview other players when you get down to the combine, especially once they finalize all the juniors that are coming out, because they're not going to be at the All-Star games. So
Right.
we knocked out 90-some interviews over that 3-day period. And Jim Nagy does a fantastic job of organizing that, so each team has the opportunity in a organized, chaotic manner, but much more organized than it was in the past, about getting in front and at least getting your 20 minutes in front of these kids. And when you go to interview the kids, it is up to the team's responsibility to make sure that you only have that 20-minute period. What do you want to address with that player? Some it's character concerns, some it may be just football stuff, some it may be intelligence things. So there's a plan in place for each player down there when you actually sit there and interview a player, the answers that you're trying to find out.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget when you're on the outside looking in and not knowing everything that goes on behind the scenes. This is, as a general manager, you are running a business and you're about to invest in a ton of personnel, and you are leaving no stone unturned. So let me ask you, in the preparation process in the week leading up, or however long it is, what is what are you doing specifically, Rick? And then what are you having your scouts do in terms of just getting to know these kids, not necessarily the on the field stuff?
Yeah, no, we actually made a book, and the responsibility that everybody had was laid out in that book. So you've got to sit and interview X, Y, and Z. Usually the scouts, that the players coming out of their area, they were really anxious, if they haven't already, to get an opportunity to sit down in front of that player. They have the sources out there that gave them all the background information, so they know what they want to address with those players. I made sure that guys that we may potentially be interested in the draft, I would sit there and try to make sure I sat in those interviews. I let the scouts kind of conduct the interviews, because they know the players better than I do at this point. And then
Let me ask you this: are you snarky at all with the players like you are with me? Or are you just very stone-faced Rick Spielman?
No, I went from running draft meetings, now it's just me and you. So, this is giving my fill of sarcasm that I can actually get off my chest, because I'm so full of sarcastic remarks that I use during the draft meetings, that now I can just use them on you.
So you have to be professional in front of the young men you have yet to really get to know.
Oh no, I've had some very, very, very interesting conversations.
Give us a glimpse.
I give you an example.
Yeah,
like Jalen Hurst was the most professional interview besides Matt Ryan and Peyton Manning that I ever sat in.
Wow, that's huge.
And I didn't know, because there were some questions about, can he play in the league, not play in the league. But when I sat there and talked to that kid, I could have talked to that kid for an hour. And his personality wasn't like over the top, but to sit there and talk football with him, to talk through the adversity that he went through from Alabama to Oklahoma, moving to Oklahoma, because he got benched down in Alabama. Then he went and those things show you what that kid is made of and why he's probably having the success he had, because even though he had setbacks, he was able to overcome. And those are some of the questions that you ask these players. And maybe we should do a segment and I can interview you on actual questions.
Oh yeah.
That I would ask a player. Although I don't know if the ratings would drop after that if they get to
I
know you a
think
little bit better.
people are legitimately interested in what's going on behind the scenes because, as a media person, I can bloviate about what I think's going to happen. You actually know what's going to happen. And by the way, that sound you hear, Rick, that's Debo crying tears of joy. He's a huge Eagles fan. So to hear Jalen Hurts was doing the things he was doing before he got to Philadelphia, I'm sure warms Debo's heart. And what's funny? Like
I got to tell you one other story. If
Yeah.
you just have 2 seconds.
Sure, go take your time.
I was interviewing a couple years ago at a Senior Bowl. Very prominent player, very good player in the league. And like a Jalen Hurts, he knew exactly who I was, and we're sitting there talking. And usually those guys are prepared, but this player was not prepared. So he just thought because he's been through 20 interviews already that night or whatever, however amount he had. I was sitting there and he goes, hi, I introduced him, hey, my name's Rick Spielman. And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, what do you do? And I says, well,
no.
Yeah, I said, I'm the Northeast scout for the for the Minnesota Vikings. And so I'm just down here trying to help interviews. He goes, well, do you know anything about me? Nah, never saw a tape on you. Don't know anything about you. I'm just trying to help fill out this. So all the people that were interviewing with me that worked for me were like chuckling. It was actually pretty funny. And then all of a sudden he Googled me while we were sitting there in the middle of a conversation. And it was like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like,
but I think
it was pretty funny. It's like we would play different games on the kids, because they come in so rehearsed. So you want to try to get to know their personality. And, my sarcastic humor has a tendency to come out every now and then. So we were sitting there, we were interviewing a kid, and I kept going, huh? And then my scout next to me says, you have to speak louder into his left ear because he's deaf. So this kid is turned his chair around, came over and sat and started speaking in the left side.
Yeah. I mean, that speaks to today's youth, that they're willing to take care of an old timer. Again, why you're antagonizing these young men in job interviews, I'll never understand. But that's how Rick rolls. I give you credit though for not, because I would imagine there's some general managers that would have been taking offense to the player not knowing who you are. You just sort of rolled with it.
Oh, I actually enjoyed it because I was just talking like I was the Northeast scout. I go, I don't know, I haven't seen your tape yet, but I think I don't know if you're as good as the kid from Holy Cross that I watched this year. And kid ended up being a first-round pick. So
look, and credit to him for Googling you and be like, oh, I'm sorry that I wasn't prepared. I think the lesson there is just treat everyone the same and assume that they're important until you find out otherwise. That's how I dealt with Pete Briscoe. I thought he was a big deal until I figured out who he was.
He's just a guy. He puts on his drawers just like we do.
I don't know if we have proof that he actually wears drawers, Rick, but that's a conversation for another time.
Okay, let's get back to the podcast.
Let's get back to the podcast. So look, I want to talk to you about players, and you're old school. Your big thing is showing up and playing, especially in bowl games. So let's start this year, and then we'll work our way back about players who helped themselves, or maybe players that you had questions about because of their decision not to play. And what we see sometimes is that players who are borderline first-round pick or maybe borderline top 50 guy come and ball out the first 2 days. And then their agent says, you know what, you're good on Thursday. You don't need to play. And that's what happens. But Will Levis got an invite. I don't think he accepted. I don't think he's coming. And I'll group him together with Joe Burrow, who was a day 3 guy best case before he got to LSU. And the way he played that year, he didn't need to show up anywhere. And he didn't.
No,
and
he was the number 1 overall pick.
No reason to do it. But if you're Will Levis coming off that sort of year, which is much worse than what Justin Herbert did his senior season, he showed up because he had something to prove. Does that leave any sort of bad taste in your mouth about the process?
Well, first thing I would be addressing with him is when you get in front of him at the combine, if you get an opportunity to interview him at the combine, is, okay, you didn't play very well this year. I understand all the potential excuses or this or that, but every time you had an opportunity to prove that you're the number 1 quarterback in this draft class, you didn't go out and do that, whether it was not playing in your bowl game, not participating down at the Senior Bowl. So to me, the first red flag that's going off into my head is, what is he trying to hide? And because I imagine if he's not showing up at the Senior Bowl, he's not showing that, opted out of his bowl game, I will bet you $1 that he does not throw at the combine. And the next
Mm,
time you'll see him do anything from a football standpoint, I'd be shocked if he did, will be at his pro day.
right. So let
So
me
to
ask you
me,
this.
that's red flags. What are you hiding? Just go out there and throw the ball or go out there and participate. I want guys that want to go out there and play when they have an opportunity to play.
Well, let me double down then. Did you learn anything about Justin Herbert that you didn't already know by him showing up in Mobile for a week?
Yes, I did. I
Okay.
learned a lot. I learned about him as a person. I didn't know what type of person he was. I've watched the tape on him.
Yeah.
To go down there and watch him actually throw live, because I didn't get an opportunity to go see him throw live during the season. It was a great opportunity to do that. But there was no question that this kid was one of the most competitive kids
Mm.
that I've ever interviewed. And if you want to go throw a ball out on the playground, let's go, let's play. And those are usually the guys that are going to have the best chance to have success.
Okay, so it is important. It's not just like we knew that Justin Herbert was physically gifted. I mean, there were questions about how the senior season went, maybe because of the offense, maybe something else. But he was good at the Senior Bowl. He didn't like set the world on fire, but he helped himself, I
You're not
thought.
going to just judge him, okay, like I have a top 10 grade on him and he does okay at the Senior Bowl or he misses some throws at the combine. Oh, God, we're going to have to move him down to the third. That's not what it's about. What it's
Right.
about is going out there, getting to know the kid, getting to see him. To me, one of the most important things that is overlooked is when these kids are interacting with each other. All these guys, some of them were teammates, most of them weren't, come together and try to formulate a team in a week. So you kind of watch what guys are stepping up and want to be the first to drill, which guys are the most competitive day in and day out at practice, which guys are the coaches correcting the most from the mental mistakes they're making, because it's a very simple offense and very simple defense that you're allowed to play down at the Senior Bowl. What guy's willing to go up and get beat one time, but jump right back in and win the next battle? Those are the things that you can't see when you're just watching game tape, but a lot of the stuff that you can pick up when they participate in this type of atmosphere.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the recent MVPs of the Senior Bowl. I'll be honest, Rick, and this is probably going to make you feel bad. I really, really liked Kellen Mond coming out, and you guys took him in the second round,
Third.
Third round, excuse me, the top of the third. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Kyle
that's when the kid from Florida,
Trask went late
Trask,
second.
and then Mims all went. They
That's
went.
right.
Trask went first, then we took Mond in the third, and then I think Mills went to Houston right after our pick.
Right. So, what did you see in Kellen Mond at the Senior Bowl, if anything, or did you already? Obviously, you probably had a pretty good opinion of him. I thought he played some really good games, but I remember talking to people in the league that thought he was too robotic and didn't think it was going to work out. What did you see that perhaps other people did?
You just seen there were a couple of throws that he made in that game that weren't robotic, because you got to remember sometimes the systems they come out of. That you remember the old Penn State when the Todd Blackledges of the worlds came out and all those guys, and they thought because they were taught to put the ball by their ear here and throw here and old school and that's just what they were taught. But sometimes when they get out of that college atmosphere that they had played in, you got an opportunity to see him ad lib a little bit more and throw the ball a little bit more naturally than maybe you saw during the season. The game that stuck out to me most was the Florida game when he made some incredible throws that game. And then you go back and you look at the LSU game the year he came out, and he didn't play very well in that game. But those are some of the things that you're hoping you're seeing. Okay, this guy's a quarterback. Is he taking command of that huddle in there, or is he talking to his teammates? Because that's part of that position, is what kind of leader he is, and are those guys kind of following him? And one of the questions we used to ask all the time is when we had a receiver come through and we were interviewing a receiver, if you had to rank the quarterbacks on your roster at the senior, how would you rate them and why?
That's interesting, because I know that Jalen Waddle and who's the other receiver in the draft class? Jerry Jeudy got similar questions about Mac versus Tua.
Right. But I'm talking about, okay, you spent 2 or 3 days down here with these quarterbacks. On your unbiased opinion, tell me about these quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, that's right. All right, let me ask you quickly about this, and then we'll go to break. 2018, Josh Allen's down there as Prisco likes to say he was playing with bouncers and bartenders at Wyoming, so it's hard to get a read on what kind of player he was going to be. From your recollection, I think he had an up and down 3 days at the Senior Bowl. Like Justin Herbert, was your opinion changed, or did you come out of it feeling similarly in terms of I don't know who this guy's going to be?
No, again, it's just verifying some things, but the most important thing down there is to look at all the ancillary things that if you didn't see him during the season and you just watch tape to actually see him. See, like I said, his interaction with his teammates. See what type of leader he is. See if he does have a bad throw. How does he bounce back, or does that linger for the next period? Maybe through a crappy one-on-one period and then he goes in 7-on-7. Does that still linger, or all of a sudden, no, he lights it up in the 7-on-7 period? So you're trying to see and measure a lot of things that you can't see when you just are watching these players on tape.
And I'm guessing you guys probably had him rated first round prior to and obviously after.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, we never changed the grade based off the Senior Bowl. We just utilize that to verify the things that we didn't see live and verify all the other avenues that you're in, answers that you're trying to get on these players.